What's up guys, my name is Mike and I'm the Weird Pigeon of Weird Pigeon Productions, and today I'm going to be reviewing the High Republic Phase 1, Wave 1, which includes Light of the Jedi by Soule, which is the adult novel in this wave. Into the Dark by Claudia Gray, and this is the young adult novel in this wave. And then the last thing I'm going to be reviewing today is the Marvel High Republic comic. This is Volume 1. If you don't know what the High Republic is a publishing initiative by Lucasfilm, so it's Star Wars books, comics, short stories, audio dramas, and it kind of works the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe works, where essentially these are all different stories, some with different characters told by different authors, and all these different stories combined into one massive coherent story. And also this entire universe they've built is set about 250 years before the Star Wars movies. So first up is Light of the Jedi by Soule. This book, it was absolutely amazing. This is what got me into the High Republic. It's crazy, these books have gotten so much hate online from Star Wars fans. The people who are complaining about these books clearly have not read them. I was a bit iffy on it just because I've heard a lot of back and forth. People were just trashing them, so I was like, I want to try these for myself. So I start with the first one, blew me away. These are absolutely incredible. The structure of this novel is very fast paced, and the story is like galaxy spanning. It's a pretty large story. From the very start, it just hooked me. It was a fast paced ride all the way through. Build up and the world building of this story and this different time in the Star Wars universe is amazing. There's a lot of different characters. I guess you could call that a drawback of the book, because a lot of times I was like having to remember, okay, who is this character? Because it introduces like 30 different really important characters that it kind of follows throughout the book. And those characters also lead in and tie into other novels. A little bit of a spoiler, you won't have to remember who these characters are for too long, because by the time you get to the third adult novel in Phase 1, a good portion of them are dead. So, yeah, there's that. But now moving on into spoiler territory. Some of the main Jedi characters in this book is Avar Kriss, who is pictured here on the cover. You've got Elzar Mann, who's probably my favorite character. He's another main Jedi. Loden Greatstorm, who is a Twi'lek, and his Padawan Bel Zedifer. Buryaga, the Wookiee, and those are kind of some of the main characters in this book. They also mention another character who's going to be very big in the rest of the series, and that's Stellan Gios. He's another Jedi. He's pretty important. This whole series is about the High Republic, which is a time where it's almost like a golden age for the Star Wars universe. It's a golden age for the Jedi. It's a golden age for the Republic. Things are great. The Republic is expanding into the Outer Rim. Their new worlds are joining the Republic. It's this big cultural boom for both the Jedi and the Republic. And the Jedi are really, really different in this novel. They're way more forgiving. They're really kind. Jedi are a little bit more free to kind of explore and do as they wish. Even the way they dress is different. They've got two different outfits that they wear. You've got the regular adventure sort of attire, and then they also have their temple robes. And the temple robes are what you see here on the cover. They're these golden ornate robes that they wear for special events, or when they're at the Jedi Temple, or for ceremonies. And they're really flashy and really cool. And I just love the way that they have built up this world with the good guys and the Republic and the Jedi. In the novel, we see the emergence of the Nihil. And the Nihil is the main villains in this novel. They're almost like space pirates or like space Vikings, where they go around the galaxy pillaging and looting and stealing from innocent people. And their structure was really interesting to read about. These villains are very different from any villains that we've seen in Star Wars so far. And they're led by three leaders called Tempest, and then one more leader who is the Eye of the Storm. And a lot of the Nihil's like names and iconography is storm related. The Eye, his name is Marchion Ro, and he is an alien of unknown origin and species, and he has a personal vendetta against the Jedi and against the Republic. For some reason, he really hates them. He's got this really cool mask that he wears, but he's very conniving. And actually, in this novel, I kind of found myself rooting for him to take complete control of the Nihil and turn it into something, just because you almost empathize with this villain, because you can tell he's been hurt by the Jedi. The reason he's so important in the Nihil is not only is he almost like the leader, he provides a lot of the plans, but he also provides what's called the paths. And the paths are these hyperspace routes that are undiscovered. And he gets this paths from this lady that he's got trapped inside of his flagship. And this lady is like over 100 years old. She's kept imprisoned in a medical pod, constantly being monitored by a doctor. And she has the rare ability to use the Force to see these hyperspace routes that are undiscovered. She's also like a mathematical genius. So she provides the paths, these routes through space to Marchion Ro, and then he provides those for the Nihil. So if she dies, he no longer has anything that he can contribute to the Nihil, which could really upset the power balance going on, because the other three Tempests don't like him. They hate him. They wish he was out of the picture. And what's neat about Marchion Ro is throughout the book, he uses different defeats and victories to his advantage. If I had to list some things I didn't really like too much, it would again probably be just there's so many characters, so many names, it's hard to keep track of it all. And the second thing would probably be that they didn't really reveal too much of the intent behind the villains and what they're doing. But I guess it is the very beginning of a massive series of books. So you could just say that, that's going to be revealed later on, which in some ways it kind of does. Now, moving on into the second book in the series, this is the young adult book, which is different than the adult book. It's written by Claudia Gray, who's probably one of the most well-known and best authors for the new Star Wars canon. So the main characters of this novel is Reath Silas, who's here on the cover. He's a bit of a bookworm. And then there's Jedi Master Comac, who is a bit reserved, a bit quiet, and he's got something up with his past. And his best friend is Orla Jareni. I think I'm pronouncing that last name right. She is what's called a Jedi Wayseeker. And a Jedi Wayseeker is someone who essentially decides, hey, I want to go out on my own. I don't want to follow the will of the Council. I want to kind of explore the galaxy and find myself and do my own thing. And the Jedi essentially let you do that, and you become what's called a Wayseeker. Also, the other main characters are part of this crew, and they ride a ship called the Vessel. But the captain of the Vessel is a guy named Leox Gyasi. I think I'm saying that name right. Again, I've only read these names. I haven't really heard them. And if I were to describe Leox, he's almost like Space Matthew McConaughey if he were a hippie. And that's essentially who this character is. His first mate, I guess you could say, is this girl named Affie Hollow, and she's actually the one holding the thermal detonator on the book. And then their third member is probably the most interesting. His name is Geode, and he is an alien. He's a Venetian from the planet Vent. And this is the first time we've ever seen these aliens. And he is literally just a rock. That's all he is. He's just a rock. I think this character is one of the funniest, most interesting characters written in the Star Wars universe, because we don't see him like move, or he never speaks. He doesn't really do anything. He's just a rock that sits there. The characters of the crew constantly refer to him as being like this partier, this flirt, this gambler, this like total like wild card character. And they're like saying this unironically, like it's true. He's actually like this. And he actually does end up saving the day quite a bit, but he is the navigator on their ship. But moving on to the villains, there's really just a couple of villains who are really important. There's Nan, and a bit of a spoiler, I'm going to be moving on into spoiler territory from here on, but Nan is also a part of the Nihil organization. She's a criminal. She's about Reath's age, and they kind of become friends, and she kind of plays him at first. And then you've also got the Drengir, and the Drengir are one of the other major villains of the High Republic besides the Nihil. They are this race of alien plant people. They can cause hallucinations in Jedi. If you cut them up, they just split into other Drengir, and they are meat eaters. They're carnivores. They eat people. They eat aliens. They are vicious. They spread like wildfire. So moving on to the plot of this book, the Jedi have to hitch a ride with the crew of the Vessel. So what they do is they end up finding an ancient space station called the Amaxine Station, but they're all kind of trapped there until further notice. And this station is full of plant life. And the people there Some are just ordinary people, but some turn out to actually be Nihil. And that's where Reith and the Jedi meet Nan and some of the other characters who are a part of the Nihil, but they don't realize it. And so the Jedi actually end up finding these statues. These statues are actually Sith statues in the station, imbued with the dark side of the Force. They take these statues with them back to Coruscant. They go to the Jedi Temple and they purify these statues, removing whatever dark side hold or dark side presence was on these Sith statues, these Sith artifacts. Eventually, events lead them back to the station where things have kind of changed. They realize some of the people there were actually the Nihil, and they confront them, including Nan, and there's a bit of a battle there on the station. But on top of this, some of the plants that were kept inside the greenhouse area are alive. They are hunting the Jedi. They're causing hallucinations. Turns out the Sith and the Drengir had a massive war eons ago, and it ended with the Sith creating this dark side spell on these statues in this station that caused the Drengir across the entire galaxy to remain dormant and to sleep. And when the Jedi cleansed the Sith presence, they awakened them all across the galaxy. It's almost like a zombie outbreak, but with plants. And eventually they all go back to Coruscant, and everything is better, but now they have this massive outbreak of man-eating plant aliens to deal with now. And that's the book. It was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as fast-paced, and it didn't really hook me the same way that the previous book did, Light of the Jedi. A lot of this book was really slow, especially in the beginning. Once you get to the Sith statues, them cleansing them and finding out about the Drengir and the Nihil on the station, things really pick up and it gets really interesting. Comac was really interesting. Him and his relationship with Orla is neat. I really liked Reith as a main character. He was neat. But yeah, I enjoyed this novel. It's not the best novel by Claudia Gray. If I had to rate this book, I'd probably give it a B. I give the last one an A or A+, because that book is just awesome. This one's probably a B for me, but it's still really good, and I highly recommend reading it. And this book, even though it's a young adult book, does tell some major important plot points that we'll see later on in the series, especially with the next thing we're going to be reviewing, the Marvel comic volume number 1. This one's called There Is No Fear. This one centers around Avar Kriss, who's one of the main characters in Light of the Jedi, Kiev, and her master, the Trandoshan Skier. I'm not much of a comic reader, and this book, this volume, I wasn't really too much of a fan of. The artwork in it is amazing. The story follows these Jedi as they go through, discover the Drengir across the galaxy and have to battle them. And we also start to see Skier and Avar start to fall to the dark side. Skier is also losing his connection to the Force. There's a lot of stuff happening. And also we see almost like this unlikely alliance with the Jedi and the Hutts. And I feel like comic books in general just kind of rush through the story. You'll get like massive galaxy-changing events in just like a page or two, which is a part of the medium, and it's not too much of a problem. But in this, it just really felt like everything was happening so quickly. It just really felt like the pacing was just so fast-paced. There wasn't a lot of time to let things kind of sink in and really get into some of these characters. The story is still really good, especially if you're interested in the Drengir as villains. If you are a comic fan, I'm sure you'll love this. If you're not much of a comic fan, I do recommend picking this up if you really enjoy the High Republic, just because, again, you get visuals to what you've been reading, and it does, again, further expand the story. If you liked Avar Kriss, she is, again, a very important character in the comics. If I had to rate this comic, I'd probably give it a C+ or B-. This is my least favorite volume of the comics so far. So really, if you read this one, just understand it's only uphill from here. They only get better. And that's it. That is my review of the High Republic Phase 1, Wave 1. These were really awesome. I really enjoyed them. If you're a big Star Wars fan, you want to read something new, something fresh, something different, highly recommend picking these up. Do not judge these without reading them. They're incredible. I loved them. I'll be reviewing the next couple of waves in the future, leading up to Phase 2. And when that comes out, I'll be reviewing those. and I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.